There's a long and noble tradition of civil disobedience in the world. From Mahatma Gandhi's Salt March to Martin Luther King Jr.'s marches in Selma, these movements were rooted in moral clarity, peaceful resistance, and a sincere yearning for justice. The document produced by Palestine Action, emailed to me by a reader this past week, is not that. Instead, what we find in Palestine Action, the Underground Manual, is a disturbing descent into lawlessness, extremism, and open calls for criminal sabotage disguised as activism. The absurdity and dangerous fanaticism laid bare in this manual and reinforced on their official website deserve to be exposed and condemned by anyone who values democracy, civil society, and the rule of law. Let's start with the basics. This isn't a guide to advocacy. It's a how-to manual for orchestrating acts of vandalism, breaking and entering, and property destruction targeting businesses and institutions simply because they have connections, real or imagined, to Israel. The manual encourages the formation of secret cells, reminiscent of terrorist groups, complete with burner phones, fake license plates, face coverings, sledgehammers, and coordinated attacks under the cover of darkness. Their targets include defense companies, government buildings, and even pipes and air conditioning units. Their goal? To sabotage, disrupt, and destroy. This is not protest. This is premeditated violence. This is vigilantism dressed up as virtue, and Palestine Action is proud of it. According to their own website, quote, Palestine Action is a direct action movement committed to ending global participation in Israel's genocidal and apartheid regime. Using disruptive tactics, Palestine Action targets corporate enablers of the Israeli military-industrial complex and seeks to make it impossible for these companies to profit from the oppression of Palestinians. This is not a fringe Facebook comment. This is their core strategy. Bypass law, ignore democratic process, refuse dialogue, and replace politics with sabotage. Their view of the world is cartoonishly black and white. Israel is evil. Anyone connected to Israel is evil. And anything done in the name of fighting Israel, no matter how extreme or destructive, then is justified. And let's be clear, their obsession with Israel is not about peace. It's not about justice. It's about hatred. These are people who don't want Israel to defend itself because they don't believe Israel should exist. The irony is striking. Palestine Action claims to oppose oppression, yet their tactics involve anonymous mob rule, vandalism, harassment, and open incitement to chaos. They scream about genocide, yet they promote a culture of aggression so unhinged that they coach followers on how to break into buildings, destroy infrastructure, hide their faces, avoid police, and dump evidence. If a right-wing group published a manual encouraging followers to destroy mosques or attack black-owned businesses with sledgehammers and cement, it would be declared a hate group overnight, and rightly so. But when the target is Israel, suddenly violence is direct action, and hate becomes solidarity. This hypocrisy is both dangerous and telling. It proves what many of us already know. Anti-Semitism is the one bigotry that still gets a pass in elite circles, so long as it's wrapped in the flag of Palestine and framed as anti-Zionism. Make no mistake, this is not about defending Palestinians. This is about erasing Israel. And if Jews are collateral damage along the way, so be it. What Palestine Action calls solidarity, any reasonable person would call criminal conspiracy. What they label disruption, the law calls domestic terrorism. And what they frame as liberation is just raw, dangerous fanaticism. This isn't activism. It's anarchism with a specific ethnic target. Palestine Action may style itself as a slick, grassroots, social justice collective. But peel back the buzzwords, direct action, resistance, liberation, and you'll find the same ugly tactics and ideologies that have defined every major Palestinian terror organization for the past 75 years. From the Palestine Liberation Organization to Hamas, these groups have wrapped themselves in the language of justice while carrying out mass murder, hijackings, suicide bombings, and rocket attacks indiscriminately aimed at civilian population centers. Their targets have never been just Israeli soldiers, but buses, schools, cafes, airports, and synagogues. Their true mission has always been rejectionism. Not peace, not coexistence, not even a two-state solution. Just the elimination of Israel. And now here comes Palestine Action, rebranded for the TikTok era, offering the same hate in different packaging. They swap suicide belts for spray paint and sledgehammers, but the ideology is the same. Their goal isn't reform, it's destruction. Their playbook isn't democratic engagement, it's coordinated sabotage. They demonize not only the Jewish state, but every Jew or non-Jew who dares to do business with it. They proudly refuse to work within democratic institutions because, in their own words, they don't believe appealing to politicians is useful. Instead, they call for shutting down companies, smashing property, evading the police, and escaping justice. This is not new. It is the same warped mentality that led the Palestine Liberation Organization to murder Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics. The same rage that drives Hamas to fire rockets at children's playgrounds from hospital rooftops. The same nihilistic obsession with Israel's destruction that fuels generations of anti-Semitic hate. Palestine Action may be operating in the UK instead of Gaza, but they are ideologically indistinguishable from the terror networks they mimic and admire. They are not activists, they are saboteurs with a PR team. What makes this even more disturbing is how eagerly the Western left has aligned itself with these radical pro-terrorist movements. So-called progressives, who would never tolerate violence, bigotry, or religious hatred from the right, turn a blind eye. Or worse, offer full-throated support when the perpetrators wrap themselves in a Palestinian flag. They excuse the inexcusable, justifying terror as resistance, vandalism as direct action, and open anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism. From campus protests to city councils, from cultural institutions to left-wing media, we now see Palestine Action and its ilk elevated as heroes, while Jews who speak out for Israel are shouted down, harassed, or canceled. The Western left has long claimed to champion human rights. But when it comes to Jews in Israel, that commitment evaporates. Instead of standing with the only democracy in the Middle East, many now cheer for its destruction, alongside the same forces that would dismantle everything so-called progressives supposedly stand for. It's not just hypocritical, it's tragic and dangerous. The left's embrace of radical anti-Israel groups has legitimized anti-Semitism, normalized violence, and driven a wedge between Jewish communities and political movements they once called home. In their desperation to appear woke, too many have fallen asleep to history. And that is exactly why we must stand with Israel. Because when Jews are hunted, harassed, and demonized in London, New York, Paris, Toronto, and Sydney, Israel remains the only country on earth founded with the explicit mission of protecting Jewish life. So yes, every decent person must stand with Israel, because Palestine Action shows us exactly what the alternative looks like.